Thanks, Nanette, for introducing us. And welcome again, everyone, to this Ignite webcast. My name is Shobit Sahai, and I have Curtis along with me on the call. I look after Exchange Online Protection, and I also am the product manager for data loss prevention and some of the encryption technologies in Office 365, like SMIME and Office 365 message encryption. And in this webcast, we are going to go over the Exchange Online Protection Service. We'll talk about the architecture a little bit. We will move on to the different services like the anti-spam, anti-malware. We'll talk about how we manage the policy with AOP. We'll look back at the reporting features that are available and how you can run message trace and things like that. And finally, we're going to talk about the new enhancements that are coming to Exchange Online Protection. A part of this is already announced last month, and some more we will be covering as part of this session. And Curtis, who's on the call with me, he'll be walking you through some of those demos as well. Lastly, we'll go back and take some more questions if they are not answered. Like I said, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to write it down on the IM window. We will try to get to it as soon as possible while we are running the presentation. But if you're not able to take it due to the time crunch, we will get back to it towards the end. So with that, let's get started. So for those of you who are not aware of Exchange Online Protection, it's basically a cloud filtering service which will protect against spam, viruses, malware, and all sort of bad things. And I thought I'd put this slide up front just to give you a sense of how big the service has become. All right, before I get there, I see a question that somebody's not able to see my presentation. Heather and Curtis, can you just confirm that you aren't able to see this?
Hey, Shobit, this is Curtis. I can see the presentation.
Oh, okay, perfect. I think there might be some issue with that particular user. All right, so Exchange Online Protection in numbers. The service has become really big in the last 1 year or so. It's been just a little, in fact, we're reaching about a year now from the time that we launched the service, and you can see that we are already processing billions of messages every day. We have more than 100,000 of customers, thousands of servers across different locations along the world. We also have our SMEs who actually wrote the code, and they are actually available for incident management. And if there are any issues that come up, they are available to help the customers on the fly. And all of this is available. And just to give you a magnitude in terms of the spam, and also in terms of why the service is so vital, and why do you want to use such a service? I mean, this is an average figure that we get about 1.3 billion messages per day on an Exchange server. And out of this 1.3 billion messages, about 740 million are spam. Now that's about 68%, which is still less than how it used to be, let's say 5 years back. That number used to be somewhere in the high 90s. So that has come down quite a bit. But still, like 68% of your network traffic is is spam. That's a waste of bandwidth. It's a waste of your network resources. And that's where Exchange Online Protection comes into picture. And the way we like to talk about Exchange security is really the three pillars that are listed on the slide. We want to protect communication with the spam and malware, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more details as we go further. It's policy enforced, so everything is built on top of the Exchange transport rules. Very friendly, it's been there for ages, and people are very familiar with it. And it's streamlined because now, instead of having a different UI for managing anti-spam and malware, we actually have brought it all together with Office 365 Admin Console. So all of that stays the same. In terms of the service level agreements that EOP provides, we recommend about 100% virus detection, 99% spam protection rate, the false positive ratio for about 1 in 250,000 messages. And then there are some elements for EOP standalone customers around the uptime and the average email delivery time, which would be less than 1 minute. So in terms of the deployment scenarios, now some of you might wonder, if this is a cloud serving service, can I still use it for my on-premises corporate network? Turns out you absolutely can. So all you have to do is you have to set up your inbound and outbound email connectors and change your MX records accordingly. But you should be able to use a service even when you're an on-premise customer. If you're an O365 customer, you still get it by default. So you just need to fine-tune it or upload it and get started and unpackage it, and you can start using the service the day you have Office 365. Now let's jump into the EOP architecture a little bit. I do want to spend like just a couple of minutes here and then move to the next couple of phases. So in terms of the inbound filtering, what happens to a message that comes from external network to your organization? So based on the email routing, based on the MX record resolution, that will get routed to the respective EOP data center. And once it has gone through that process, we will do some basic entry-level checks, things like the IP-based edge blocking, blocking based on regular expression. There might be some URL block lists, so we may want to use that. And once that phase is completed, we will scan the messages across 3 different antivirus engines. And at this point, if there's any viruses in the messages, those will get quarantined or they'll be deleted. And from that point onwards, the next logical step is to enforce the policy. Now, you as an IT organization, you might have enforced some policies that if I get a message from this particular IP, or if I get a message from this particular sender, or the message is more than 8 MB in size or things like that, you may want to take some actions. So based on those, we will apply those policy enforcement rules. And finally, from there, we will also look at some of the additional spam protection capabilities and scan it through the bulk mail filtering, or if you have set up some international spam, we'll go through that. And at this point, if you have any spam, if the IW workers in your organization, they have reported certain spam, they will be sent to the Microsoft team, and we have a dedicated team for spam analysts. These are actual people who look at these messages and say, okay, is this a spam? Why is it a spam? And what can I do with it? And can I improve it so that the next time it gets detected early, so you don't have to worry about the false positive and false negative. And finally, when it's gone through all those rules, it's finally going to move on to the corporate network. I noticed that quite a few people on the phone are saying that they're not able to see the presentation, but I can see quite a lot of you are already able to see the presentation. So I'm guessing there's some sort of connectivity issues at your end. But be advised that this presentation has been recorded, and we will be making this recording available right after the call as well. So you won't be missing anything. If you do miss something here, then don't worry, we'll have a recording for you. And yes, we will have the PPT downloadable as well along with this. All right. So talk about the EOP outbound filtering. Now that we have spoken about the messages coming inside your organization, what happens if you're sending it outside? So a couple of things remain the same here. When the message is first sent externally, the first thing that will happen is the virus scanning, because you want to make sure that it doesn't have any outbound viruses. So we'll make sure we do that and then send that across. The next step, again, is to move through the policy enforcement, which is where those custom rules will be applied. If you have applied things like, hey, my messages, if they are sent externally, should be encrypted, they will get encrypted, and all those things will come into picture. And then from there, it will go through the spam protection, which is where we will apply some of the heuristic techniques that we have, and advanced spam management for outbound spam. And something like this is easily possible to set up through EOP and the Office 365 admin console. And Curtis, who's on the call, he'll actually walk you through some of this stuff, so we'll see it in action. Now, the important part here is once you have gone through this process, and based on the quality of the message, we will then assign a score to your message. Now, this score is something that defines how good or bad your message is. Based on that score, we have a set of different outbound pools, because we want to make sure that all the good messages go through that good outbound pool. And if there's a message which has a very high score and it's not able to, it has some spam, or if it's a high risk, we send it through a different pool, and it's delivered via a different pool, and that makes sure that your server reputation is not impacted. And the whole point across this is you don't want your IP addresses to be blocked by someone external. You want your IP address to be a good one in the eyes of the recipient. And by providing these different pools, we make sure that we are minimizing that possibility. All right. So let's talk about the spam. A couple of quick things that I want to cover here. We talked about 99% SLA for spam, and in terms of how we filter the spam, 80% of the spam gets filtered based on the connection filtering level. So based on the IP addresses that you may have set up or allow and block list, we would remove 80% of those spam there. The remaining 15% of the spam will be removed based on the sender recipient filtering. So your users might have blocked a certain user, put them on a block list, or put certain users on a allowed list. Some of them also referred to as the black and white list. So 15% of the spam gets blocked there because all that list gets synchronized via directory sync with Office 365 EOP console. And finally, the remaining 5% of the spam is detected based on the internal heuristics that we provide. So an example that I'd like to point out here is that, hey, let's say Shobit is a spammer, and I also know that Shobit is a product manager. That means Curtis, who is also a product manager, could also be a spammer. So these are some of the heuristic techniques that we use to detect that something else may also be a spam. And based off that, we assign that probability and assign that score to it. We provide a lot of controls, and a lot of new controls have been added to EOP from the last known service called FOPE, which was the previous version for EOP. You can take those different filtering actions from deleting the message to putting it on quarantine, adding some sort of header or encrypting that message, modifying the subject, or redirecting it altogether. There's a whole bunch of actions and controls available to you out of the box, and you can use them through your Exchange transport rules. The other thing to point here is that we give you two different categories for spam based on the score. So you can put something called as an obvious spam, and you can have something called as a high confidence spam. And based on the quality of spam or what kind of spam it is, you can take different actions. So maybe in your organization, what you may want to do is, if you see something as an obvious spam, you may want to just straight away put that in quarantine or block it or delete that message or whatever. But if it's something is a high confidence spam, you may still want to put that onto the user's junk mail folder and let them take an action on deciding, okay, is this a spam, and give them or empower them to make that choice of what they want to do with it. Alrighty, so international spam. Now with EOP, we actually provided this new capability of blocking spam from international regions and locales. So there are about 87 different locales and about more than 250 different regions from where you can block that email. A couple of weeks back, I was in an EBC with one of our Ukrainian customers, and he had a concern with a lot of bulk spam that he was getting in Arabic language, and he then started using EOP, and he saw a drastic decrease in that number. So this is something that you may use when you want to block those unwanted emails based on the language or from a different region. EOP provides that capability out of the box, and it's very easy to configure, and again, something that we will walk through in the demo when we do it. Anti-malware, we provide the basic options that allow you to block the entire message if required, or and also make sure that if there's an attachment, you may want to strip it off. There is also a possibility for sending the notifications to the different users, and you can do that as well through the rule management on the Office 365 Office 365 admin console. You can also modify the message in general as well. So if you want to put up some custom alert to the users that, hey, this message contains malware, and you should be able to see that exact alert and messages based on what the admin configured. Now, I talked about that EOP is entirely managed via ETRs, it's policy-based. And when you look at one of such ETR rules, I think if you're not familiar, this is how that rule looks if you're looking at the screenshot on the right. It is based on a simple condition, and then there's different clauses like action and exceptions. So you would put up a condition like, hey, if the message is size is greater than 5 MB, then I want to block this message or encrypt it with so and so. That becomes your action. But I don't want to do this action for the CEO of my company. So put his account as an exception. So that is possible through the ETR rule. A question here is around, is there a method for a user to request a quarantine summary on demand? So we do provide end user spam notifications, which basically can be configured by admins, and they can be configured to run from 1 to 15 days. And Curtis can show you this in the demo. So hold back to your question on that one. So a couple of things here around the actions and exceptions that I talked about. And there are a variety of actions and even the rules that are possible. So conditions in this case that you're looking at, this is just a gist of conditions that you see when you're trying to create a new rule. And you can see that conditions vary across different areas. It could be based on the sender, it could be based on the recipient, it could be based on the message property in general, or it could be based on the attachment in the message. And we provide those great details which allow you to take those options where you can decide, hey, this is the condition I want to enforce. So for example, in this case, I'm selecting that this person is external or this person is a member of a particular group, then apply a policy. And similar to the condition, there's also a whole lot of actions available for you to use. So you can apply different actions straight from outrageously blocking that message to applying encryption or modifying so as to add some sort of a disclaimer to that message, or redirecting or sending it to the manager. If he has to approve it, then only the message goes through. And all of these options are available out of the box as a standard ETR policy, and you can use them straight away. And lastly, the other thing that I wanted to cover is with EOP, we also added some enhancements in terms of the rule in general. So if you want to run a particular rule in just a test mode, you're not sure if this new policy is something that will work for your organization, you want to first do a test run before you actually enforce it across the different accounts, you can totally do that. And you can also choose whether or not during that test phase, you want to send out notifications based on the custom rules that you may have set up. That's what we generally refer to as a mode for that rule. You're seeing that at the bottom of the screen on this particular screenshot. You also have now the capability of deactivating or activating the rule at a certain point of time. And this can help you if you want to run the rule only from, let's say, next month between so and so date. You can do that by simply selecting that option from the rules. So let's talk about reporting, jumping guns. And if there are any unanswered questions at this point, I'll be happy to take them as we go through. And a lot of these questions will be answered when we are running through the demo. And because I do want to run through some of the slides because we want to cover some of the new things that we are doing. So we'll come to it. In terms of the reporting, we do provide through our Office 365 admin console, you would see the standard reports available where you can go and check what are the top reports, or if you want to look at the spam history or malware, all of them is available out of the box in the spam reports section through our Office 365 admin console. And additionally, we also provide an Excel downloadable workbook. And this is purely for the people who are more Excel friendly and they want to do slice and dice of data and they find Excel a lot easier. That's possible via EOP, and you can download that Excel workbook, and that workbook can connect straight to your via web service through your tenant, and it will pull the data for the last 90 days to get you the information you need. So the summary reports are available for 7 days and detailed reports are for 90 days. And we'll talk some more enhancements on this area when we get to the new stuff coming to EOP. One more thing that I wanted to cover before I pass the page into Curtis, so that he can take you through the demo, is one of the things that we like to call out for the EOP is that we have data centers across the globe. So we have the data centers in North America, the EMEA region, uh, the China and APAC region as well. So if you have a mail that's been routed through that particular region, it will only go through that region. Meaning, if you have an email which you're sending from China, that will stay in China. Or if you have a mail in North America, it will stay in North America. And we kind of refer to this as something called as geocenter affinity. And this is something that we are continuously looking to expand into. And we already have a good reach right now, but it's something that we will expand as we go forward in coming months. With that, I am going to talk about some of the new upcoming improvements. And I'm not sure if I think some of you were actually asking this on the IM window. I was trying to hold back. So here's a short list of some of the upcoming EOB improvements, and some of them actually have already been announced through our February blog titled EOB upcoming enhancements. So there's enhanced reporting. The reporting capabilities are going to be enhanced in terms of what you can do with those online reports. You can look at it and just choose where, if you want, for example, one of the improvements we are doing is if you hover over to a particular report, you can exactly see which email was fired at that point, or and all that summary will be available at the bottom of that email. It's available in that blog. We are extending the message trace data to a greater number of days. I think there was a question earlier on DBEB, so it's already available. I think it's already rolling out, and it's almost due completion now. We also introduced the PowerShell access for standalone customers who didn't have access. They all get it now directly. We also increased the domain limit. So initially this used to be about 600. Now we are increasing that to 900. So 50% increase there. And this is across Office 365. So it should work everywhere except for Link for now. And finally, we also talked about the junk mail reporting for OVA, which was available earlier for Outlook, but it's coming to OVA and is also available to our SP1 release. In April, which is the time frame that we'll get to MEC, we also are going to announce some new enhancements, and some of them are listed out here. This is not the laundry list. This is just some of the things that we are ready to talk about. So there is a whole lot of stuff which is missing in this list, but we are working on it, and they'll be out very soon. And the first of which is the end user access to quarantine. So today we have the admin quarantine, and we have the capability to provide end user notification and things like that give you that message diary or digest. But going forward, we will also provide that same capability to the users. So your IW workers can access and decide what they want to do with quarantine. And you'll see some early screenshots or demo of that today. We also are going to improve our support for IPv6. So that's going to extend from how we do it today. At the same time, we will also bring in BKIM, which stands for Domain Keys Identified Mails, which is one of the technologies that kind of help you with targeted attacks, and we see that come up a lot these days. We are also going to expand and release the match subdomains feature, which will basically allow you to add a subdomain, and I mean the rules will get fired for the individual subdomains as well, instead of mentioning all the subdomains of a particular organization. So if you have a Contoso organization and you have within Contoso Education, Contoso Pharma, you don't have to mention each of them. Mentioning Contoso itself will take care of everything. And in terms of geocentric affinity, I talked about the data centers, and we are going to expand that into some other regions like APAC and some more that we'll announce during MEC. So with that, I'm actually going to pass the baton to Curtis, who's actually going to walk you through some of this new capabilities and also provide you a quick overview of the EOP admin. So Curtis, I'm just going to stop presenting at this point, and if you want to go ahead and present, be my guest. Excellent. I can see your screen, Curtis. You may want to unmute yourself, by the way.
All right. Can you hear me now, Shobit?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So now let's take a look at, the day in the life experiences of managing EOP. We'll look at certain scenarios that, certain organizations may be facing as they're working to attempt to address certain challenges within, the EOP environment. All right. So in this scenario, I'm an administrator for a Contoso company, and our end users have been complaining about certain scenarios that are bothersome and affecting them. So what we're going to look at is the interface and how to create some of these rules to address those challenges. Okay, so initially as an administrator, I'm going to go ahead and log into my Office 365 administration console. And as you can see quickly, I get a good at-a-glance view of my service health, the current health of my services that I'm currently using. And if you look here at this mail protection section, I can also get a good view from Exchange Online Protection on an outlook of the last 7 days of a breakdown around how many messages have been filtered as it relates to spam, how many have been detected by the malware filter, as well as what percentage of messages have been filtered out based on rules that I've created, whether it be, the transport rules or even DLP specifically, those policies that I've created. It's giving me a nice outlook about, how my organization has been affected by those. Okay. So now let's take a look at some scenarios. My end users have been complaining about being affected by bulk mail filtering. By bulk email that have been appearing in their inboxes. So they're asking, how can we address that so that I'm not affected by bulk email? All right. So how we can do that within EOP is go ahead and take a look at our anti-spam content filtering policies. And what we'll see under the content filter, if I go ahead and edit my default rule, are the actions that I can specify for my organization on how we want to address spam. All right, I have two categories here. One of those is called spam and another is called high confidence spam. All right, my spam category is going to be the obvious spam. Okay, it has been confirmed spam. What do I want to do with those messages? All right, I do have several options in the drop down, but for this particular scenario in addressing bulk mail, I'm going to go ahead and say let's quarantine that message. All right, again, the second scenario is called high confidence spam, and these are going to be messages that certainly carry high characteristics of being considered spam. But here I'm going to say I'm going to allow my end users to make their own decision. I'm going to move those messages to the junk mail folder. All right, since we are going to address this bulk mail scenario, we do want to also go ahead and quarantine those messages. All right, so I'm going to leave my retention period here at 15 days. I could also change that or lower that number if I want to. Okay, so we're going to leave that at 15. But to address the bulk mail scenario, let's go ahead and look at our advanced options. All right, and we're going to scroll down in the advanced options, and we'll see an option here called block all bulk mail email messages. All right, we're going to go ahead and turn that on. All right, so in one simple click, what you can see is I've addressed the bulk mail scenarios in my organization. EOP will now mark messages that have been classified as bulk as spam. All right, and based on my spam filter category that I've set earlier to go ahead and quarantine those, these messages will now be quarantined. All right, and one of the scenarios that they've also brought up in my user community is that some of the images, some of the emails that they've been receiving have also contained image links that point to some remote sites. So we can also address that within these advanced options and go ahead and turn that on as well. There's an option to increase that spam score if there are image links that point to remote sites. Okay, so we're going to click Save, and as simple as that, we have addressed the issue of bulk mail and the fact that there have been emails that contain image links that points to remote sites very quickly and very easily. Okay, so now let's take a look at another scenario we have, and this relates to users that have been affected by some advanced targeting threats. Okay, advanced targeted threats meaning Russian languages, or not specifically Russian, but different languages that users are saying, I keep getting these messages in a particular language in my inbox. Can you help me address those, address this scenario? And in this case for Contoso, this particular scenario is only affecting a particular group. All right, so we'll call them the executive group, you know, for this scenario. All right, so how can we address that? All right, we need to address the issue of a certain language being, a certain language affecting some of my users. In this case, we'll say it's the Russian language, and it's only affecting my executive group. All right, but in the case of EOP, we can create a rule and target them particularly to a user, group, or domain. All right, just so you're aware of that. All right, but in this case, we'll go ahead and give our rule a name, and we'll call it, we'll enable Russian spam filtering, excuse me, for our exec group. And because I'm creating this particular rule for a specific group, all right, I'm going to go ahead and look at these spam options and also say when this is seen, we'll go ahead and quarantine the message for my executive team. All right, we'll leave the retention at 15 days. And here, as I also scroll down, I see my international spam filtering. All right, I have two options here to filter messages in the following languages or via country or region. All right, so in this case, my users have been complaining about, again, the Russian language. So I will select languages and then scroll down. And I do have a number of options here to select, and I can select only one language, or I can also select multiple, or I could select all. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and select the Russian language in this case and click add and then click OK. Now, two things I've done is I've started the rule for my executive group. Specifically, I've marked the messages as to be quarantined when this is seen. All right, I've selected my language. Now I'm going to scroll down and add in the last action to this rule and apply the message to the executive group specifically. So I'm going to say if the recipient is a member of, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the executive group and apply this rule specifically to the executive team. So, you know, as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility in EOP to really create an extremely targeted rule, again, to the user, group, or domain. All right, so I select my executive team, and as you can see, I'm searching for my executive group right from within EOP, and this is because I have directory synchronization enabled as well. So performing directory synchronization really allows me to, you know, see my community that I have to manage and really leverage that synchronization with my Active Directory to create these targeted rules. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Save, and as you can see, I've quickly addressed that scenario as well, and that rule will be created, and we can continue to move forward. All right, so now let's look at another scenario where a user has said that they have lost a particular mail, all right, within my Contoso company. So they have said and called in, we have a user, Sarah, and she has lost a particular message, and she would like to know if we can help address or find out what happened to it. So EOP does have a feature or function called message tracing. The message tracing will allow me to find out the status of a particular communication between a sender and recipient. It will also allow me to be investigative in tracking the transmission or the behavior of an email communication, as it's being filtered, if you will. So I can perform a range of searches here within the past 24 hours, past 48, or even the past 7 days. And I can also select a custom range if I want to target a specific date and time. All right, so for this case, I'm going to go ahead and select within the past 7 days. All right, and if I knew the status of, that I wanted to search on, I could select that, and I have several options there. All right, but here I'm going to go ahead and select all. All right, because I want to look for everything that's happened between, Sarah and the intended recipient. Okay, or even vice versa, of course. All right. If I had the message ID, I could certainly add that in there and add that as part of the criteria. All right, but here I know my sender was Sarah, so I will go ahead and search for Sarah, and I will add Sarah as the sender. And as a recipient, she's made me aware of the recipient, so the recipient is external to the company, and I'm going to go ahead and type that name into our people picker here, and I'm going to go ahead and add the recipient. Now, one thing to note here is if you're investigating without, you just performing an investigative search, I can also just come in and select my date range and click search, and it will go grab the messages, just based on the date range that I've specified. It will retrieve those messages so I can perform my investigative search. All right, but here we've specified a sender and recipient, so let's go ahead and click search, and the message trace results will appear, and I can see I have one message on 3/19 between the sender Sarah and recipient. I can see what the subject line was, and I can see that the actual status was delivered. All right, so maybe there's something else going on, but at least as an administrator, I know that I can, confirm that the message has been delivered. And just to be sure on what may be happening, or just to make sure, if anything else has happened, I can double click on this message within the message trace and just going to expand it a little bit, and I can get even more information. I can see the message size, the message ID, the IP address information between the two, and then as you can see, you can get different details about what has happened when the message was received and when it was delivered as well. So again, a lot of flexibility, a lot of intelligence here that will allow me to spend and target my time appropriately as I'm investigating a particular incident. All right. Okay, so certainly there's plenty more that can be accomplished within EOP. We wanted to address certain scenarios from an administrative perspective today, just to give you a look and feel of how easy it is. Just within a simple few clicks, you can really address scenarios or challenges that organizations may face. All right, so very easy here. All right, so now that we've looked at the admin side, let's take a look at the end user experience and how you can empower the end users to manage their own spam, kind of perform half the battle for you, in the battle of managing spam. Okay, so in doing so, you do have a few options that you can leverage to empower the users. All right, so let's take a look at what some of those are and kind of get a look and feel of what that experience would be like for your end users. All right, so the first scenario I want to look at here is going to be leveraging the junk mail reporting tool. All right, now this is an add-in for Outlook, which you can download. And once it's downloaded and installed on the client, within my Outlook ribbon, I can see under my junk option here that I have an option to report junk. okay, via the Microsoft Junk email reporting add-in. Now, I can leverage this add-in on, to report junk to our Microsoft Spam Analyst for further review on a single message or multiple messages. Okay, I can select a single message or multiple messages and select the junk option and say I want to report these as junk for further review by our Spam Analyst team. And I can click yes, and those messages will be reported. Okay. I can also do this from within the email message. I still have my Outlook ribbon, and I can select the report junk option just as I did previously. Okay, so I can click yes, and those messages will be reported for further review. All right, so we've told EOP, we've told our service that these messages are not junk. Please consider these in the tuning of the filter. All right, so another option that you can use to empower or leverage to empower the users is the Outlook junk mail folder. Okay, there are features within the Outlook junk mail folder to configure your individual user safe sender list and block sender list. Now, I did mention directory synchronization earlier. Okay, if you are leveraging directory synchronization while using EOP, a big benefit of doing so, okay, is not only can you sync your users and your group information from Active Directory, but each individual user's safe sender list and block sender list will actually be synced to EOP. So as the service is filtering for me, for example, and I've chosen to add, let me go ahead and let's look at those options for the junk mail filter while I'm talking. All right, so if I look at my junk mail email options, and I see my safe sender list and my block sender list here, if I add to my safe sender list or my block sender list, because I'm using directory synchronization, these will be synced to the service. So if I say a message is safe and the user next to me says it is blocked, for me it will be safe. For the user to, sitting next to me, it will be blocked. So it really empowers the users to make their own decision and manage their own spam. Because spam is certainly different and not the same for everyone. Okay, that's another option. Let's take a look at another option we have that will allow the admin to make a choice to enable this feature or not, and this is the end user spam quarantine notification. Okay, this is a sample of the spam quarantine notification. This will satisfy the need for the mail to be stored in the cloud and to present a snapshot of what has been marked as spam for an individual user within their inbox. And certainly you can change the frequency of how often these are delivered. Again, that's an admin feature to change that frequency, again, to also enable this feature. Once doing that, again, the messages will be stored in the cloud. Now, as an end user, as you can see here, I've got the sample notification here. I'm seeing that the message is addressed to me, and I have, a certain amount of messages that are marked as spam, and what the options are that I have available to me. I can release the message to the inbox, which will send the message directly to my inbox, or I can report the message as not junk. And this will, again, very similar to that add-in that we looked at earlier. This message, if I, from within the notification, report the message as not junk, it will also report the message to our spam analysts here at Microsoft for further review and tuning of the service, okay? So I can see the sender that has sent me the message, the subject line, the date it was received, the size, and again, the two options that are active here within the email, which I can select and make my own decision. So I can release to the inbox, report it as not junk. Okay, so very, very easy for me to understand what's happening here as a user and make my own decision. All right, so now what I want to do is let's look at one more option, and I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting for a moment. and switch over to our presentation. And I'd like to show you the screenshot of another feature we have called the end user quarantine. So just a moment here. I'll make this switch. All right. So hopefully, I'll just give just a few seconds here. Hopefully everyone can see the screenshot. I'm now back into the presentation.
Yeah, of course you can see that now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here's a screenshot of the end user quarantine. Okay, so let me just really quick, just backtrack. We've looked at the junk mail add-in for Outlook. We've looked at the Outlook junk mail management options in the safe sender block sender list. We've looked at the quarantine notification for the end user. And here is the end user quarantine. This is going to be a web portal experience for the end users to individually log into and manage their spam. Okay, so same experience as the notification, but now they have the options to log into a quarantine, see the sender subject when it was received, when the message was received, and then make the choice to release the message or again report the messages as not junk. Okay, so a lot of options here that you have to empower the end users. That is certainly a benefit of leveraging EOP in a given environment. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass back to Shobit to continue on moving forward with our presentation.
Thanks, Curtis. I just have a couple of slides ahead. I just want to talk about the MEC as well. I mean, as some of you already know, it's in like T-minus 2 weeks to go now. This time it's happening in Texas, Austin. And we are running hard in terms of registration, but we still have some more registrations to go. So if you have any questions specific to UOP, I think it's a great session or an event to attend. There are a bunch of sessions on EOP that are planned for MEC. So starting from the basic overview around EOP to a deep dive into how does Microsoft handle my spam. And we'll also have some experts from the field come in and from our IPM support teams who will talk about some of the notes that they have taken from their customer engagements, and those would come into picture. We're also going to talk about the encryption in Exchange, which will cover the different encryption technologies that are available, from S-MIME to RMS to the recent Office 365 message encryption. Then there are finally some more unplugged sessions, and these are really the non-recorded, closed-door, less number of people kind of sessions where you can go and have your questions answered. It's more of less of a presentation format, more of a, hey, here's my question, or what do you have to say about it? And finally, there's also multiple sessions around the transport architecture, as EOP is very closely tied in with the transport and ETR rules. I think that's another great session, and which was a hot spot last year during MEC 2012 or 2013, whenever that happened, 2012 actually. So if you haven't seen this, or if you want to pass it along to your customer, feel free to do that. And it's a highly valuable event where you can get a ton of knowledge. We have a whole set of team coming down, especially from engineering as well. So find out more about that online. For the FTEs, I believe there is some sort of promos going on right now, and I would ask John about that, John Orton, if you haven't heard back, or just reach out to the MEC forum team. They'll be able to provide you the details, and I can provide the address on our window. All right, with that, we can actually go to the Q&A, and Curtis and I are on the call. So I know we tried to answer as many questions, but I think there were a lot more. So if we have any other questions, feel free to write it down on the IM window, and we'll answer your questions. So I think I'll take the first one. I think Dan is asking about the end user quarantine. So we would start, I mean, our time frame is Q2, but having said that, we would actually start releasing that sometime in April. So the deployment will start sometime in April. It might take another 6 to 8 weeks before it gets completed worldwide.
And hey, Shobit, this is Curtis. There's a question about the quarantine message. Will that eliminate the need to log into the portal?
Yeah.
So, there's some competitor solutions that require the portal login. So, yes, again, I showed a few options that you can leverage to empower the users. You certainly, you have your choice to use the portal experience, or you will have that choice, or leveraging the notification. Organizations can use the feature of their choice. That's most appropriate for them. So absolutely.
Yeah. Jim has another question around the um, exempt from filtering. Um, I haven't seen this personally, but this is the first time I'm hearing about this. I'm just going to take a note of the question he just asked, actually, for my reference.
Okay.
Where can I find a reference of transport rules and EOP rules? Do you mean the customer references, or are you referring to some guides? So we have some of our references already on TechNet. I think we don't have anything beyond that. If you feel those are not adequate, I can check with our UA team, but I think we have the best resources available today on TechNet around message, the extended ETR rules. And there's a wide range of topics that we cover there.
And there were some other scenarios of one, where can you find the Outlook add-in? And that is, there's a link available within TechNet under the message tracing options to find that download. Excuse me, not message tracing. There's a link within the EOP area of TechNet to find the link to download the Outlook add-in. And someone asked about typing or adding in an external email address to the message trace, and if you go back and look at the demo as well, I actually did that. So you'll see in the people picker where I typed in the external email address outside of my organization and performed that search between the sender and the external recipient.
There was a question earlier, I think, around does EOP have same limit as Exchange Online? Yes, the limit is 100 transport rules. And having looked at some of the migrations we have done in the recent past, where we migrated a customer who were using FOPE and they had like 640 some ridiculous rules, we brought it down to 27 in EOP. So that limit is highly, you know, yes, EOP is available for purchase standalone as well as a different service. You can purchase it for $1 per user per month in US, and you should be able to use that with your on-premise services. That's a great question from Michael. I know that has come up a couple of times, the logical or. I don't have an answer for that. Will the highly likely spam automatically stop? No, that is separate. I mean, you can decide what you want to do with the high obvious spam or high confidence spam. You can still take those actions as admin, whether you want to send it to your users junk mail folder or move them quarantine, but you might still empower your end users at the same time.